Welcome to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis, where every day I aim to bring you the latest in UFO reports and other fascinating stories from around the globe. Today is Tuesday, January 30th, 2018, and on Fridays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, please join me for my talk show, The Outlander, where I answer your emails, take your calls, and interview some intriguing guests. Just go to irnchat.com to chat, interact, and listen live to The Outlander Show. Blasting off with some UFO reports, this first one comes to us from London, Ontario. This occurred November 29th, 2016, slightly from the past. Observed bright star-like light for 15 minutes until it disappeared behind neighbor's roof line. Used 8 by 25 binoculars to see 5 lights across the side facing me. Circular, illuminated lights. Could have been windows. They seemed quite large. In more detail, the witness states, on Tuesday, November 29, 2016, at 16 p.m. local time, it had been dark for a while. I went out into my garage. Once I had entered the rear door of the garage, my attention was immediately drawn to a very bright light in the southwestern location outside the garage's south-facing window. I assumed it was a star, Venus specifically, but was curious enough to go and get my binoculars. 7-year-old Canon, 8 by 25, is on the previous Thursday night at around 7 p.m. I and a neighbor had used a phone app to correctly locate Venus from his front lawn. This location now, of what I thought should have been Venus, seemed off once I started to mentally compare it to the previous Thursday night's location of Venus. This is probably what prompted me to go and get my binoculars and go back into the garage to observe the star through the window again from what I had determined was the best vantage point after walking around the property. That was a big, giant run-on sentence, okay? I'm just saying. I had no reason to expect to see anything but a star until I looked through the binoculars and saw that it was a circular disc with 5 light-filled apertures in a row along the side edge facing me. I was at once confused and shocked because I was expecting to see one bright light, as from a star, not a disc with 5 light-filled openings in a row. Multiple times I switched between looking at it with my naked eyes and through the binoculars. It was always the same. Single bright light with naked eye and 5 separate lights around the outside disc shape when viewing through the binoculars. I just kept saying to myself, it has 5 lights. I was so surprised. It was moving so slowly that I didn't think it was moving at all, except that during the 15 minutes that I could see it, it had moved to a position up against the garage door about 1.5 feet. And was standing on my tiptoes in order to continue watching it over and beyond my neighbor's roof. It did not seem to change altitude for the duration of the time I watched it. It did not revolve. It did not display any other light color other than white, nor did any lights ever blink. How about, did it spin around on a top? Nor did that? I'm just kidding. The 5 apertures on the side edge visible to me seemed rather large and did not appear to be the source of the bright light visible with the naked eye. By that point, I wouldn't have been surprised to see figures moving past any of these openings around the sides of the inside of the craft, but I did not see any movement. There were a few wispy clouds in the sky, which allowed me to see that there were additional lights continuing around the out-of-view side edges of the craft. The clouds reflected back enough of the craft's light to allow me to see its shape. I watched until it disappeared behind the neighbor's roof line. During the time I was watching it, I called my husband, who was 5 minutes' drive due west of me, and he grabbed binoculars but could only see the singular bright light. So then I called a coworker. She was driving south to go home, and though she could see the bright light, she had no binoculars to view it more closely. This is not my first sighting of a disc-shaped craft from my home. That is for another report. Sincerely. Whew, that took a lot. Okay, moving on. Ooh, this is a UFO blast from the past. This happened in Gadsden, Alabama. June 15th, 1969. Triangular shape, domed top. Underside black with triangle-shaped circles, windows, panels inside windows. I was at my mom and dad's home. I looked at a strange ball of light in the place where I thought Venus would be in the sky. I swear, Venus is always thought to be the culprit, isn't it? I love to stargaze, so it was in the evening hours just before dark. The object was a huge, bright object. I ran and got my nephew and big brother, and we all observed it. The one object slit into four objects. One went in each direction. The mothership, as I call it, shot straight up. In 2 seconds, it was gone. The one that came towards us descended down until it leveled off. It seemed just a little more than treetop height. I was very young, about 12 years old, but I remember seeing the object as I was up close. It was triangle shaped, with the top being a little dome shape. It had no sharp edges. The area where the lights were flat panels. One panel will light, then move to the next until it made a full circle around the ship. When the light in one panel would go out, I could see a metallic panel through the glass. The craft flew until it stopped over the northeast sky and sat for a couple of hours. Wow. At this time, my brother called the radio station and reported it. They said it had been reported and a jet was en route. Oh, get out. Huh, isn't that neat when you could call the media and they respond and actually believe you? And they're like, we're on it, dude. Got a jet going right that direction. Ha! That's crazy. Wow, I wish we could do that these days. We heard and seen the jet. When the jet got close to the object, it shot straight up and was gone in seconds. I highly doubt a UFO is, wow, afraid of us. Okay, whatever. The dates I gave may not be completely right because I am now 60, and it's hard to remember exactly the dates, but the images of the ship are burned in my memory. I could tell an artist the full description. The underside was circles of triangular-shaped circles that had 7 circles until they reached the middle. Gosh, you saw great detail. It was kind of burnt looking, maybe the propulsion area? The object did not make a sound as it flew over. Unfortunately, we didn't have a camera. Darn it. We couldn't afford one back then. Who could? I mean, really? Wow, but they call the radio station and they're like, dude, we got it, we know. Jet's on the way. Okay, thanks, bud. Hang up the phone. Watch the jet chase a UFO out. You know, I think sometimes, all too often we give credit for our government having access and building these things themselves. But here's a triangular shaped craft. In the 1969, I don't think we had that back then. And to move as fast as it did. Unless we're time traveling with these things, then that's a whole other story. But it would seem that perhaps these were aliens. And it wasn't any kind of back engineered UFO. I don't know. I'm just saying. Did they really back engineer the Roswell crash UFOs by that time? It's a possibility. Okay, moving on. UFO sighting in Saugus, Massachusetts. Oh, UFO blast from the past. This goes all the way back to June 30th, 1967. In brief, the witness states, white disc. In more detail, myself and 2 friends were sitting on a stone wall looking at the sky. There had been several local sightings around the same time period, so we were discussing things that one friend's father had told her. As we looked up, we saw the white disc traveling across the sky at a steady rate. Just passing through, guys. We decided it was a UFO. My friend said her dad told her if you stayed at the UFO and thought something, like flash the object, would respond by doing that. So she tried, but nothing happened. I tried by thinking, stop. It did, and then started back towards us. We panicked and ran. Hold on. What an interesting thing. 1967. And it seems rather new to people that these UFOs respond. And they do. They interact. The flashlights will come down. It happened to me. Happened to me 3 different occasions. It's literally in my books. um, wow, 1967. This girl's father knew. Think something or flash something at it, and it'll respond. And here's all these people that are like, I have mystical powers. Look, the UFO is paying attention to me. Way back then, they realized it. Isn't that fascinating? I have not heard that before. That man was ahead of his time. That's all I'm going to say. Huh. This next one, UFO sighting in Los Angeles, California. This happened, Christmas Day, December 25th, 2017. Plane ride to LAX from Milwaukee. Oh, my hometown. 30 minutes from landing. All right, in more detail, they state, flight to LAX on Christmas Day. Not sure if this is anything special. Saw this 30 minutes before we landed. My guess was we were near Area 51. Oh, the lights grabbed the attention of everyone on board, and it was fairly cloudy, and these lights would pierce the clouds, even when we were in them deeply. Oh, that's cool. Huh. I figured a reflection from solar panels at first, but the blinking was synchronized and penetrating. Shortly after we became parallel to the lights, which appeared to be below us or near the ground, the pilot turned away to put distance between us. Oh, did he now? He then re-altered course after a while. To me, it seemed like a correction to resume. But we were 30 minutes from landing, so I'm not sure. I didn't think to take video earlier. The video you see is towards the end of the sighting as the plane moves away after the course correction. Let me know if you know what it is. Thank you. I'm not looking at it right now. Woo! Can you imagine? All right, boys and girls, we're going to take a little diversion from these lights in these highly thick clouds that seem to be running parallel next to us. Everybody have a seat, and we're just going to divert. What the heck? Wow, you put that on the 10 o'clock news, did ya? No, nobody did. Sucks. All right, moving on. UFO sighting in Knoxville, Tennessee. This occurred September 24, 2017. Orange light passed overhead, disappearing before I lost sight. Bright and orange, star-sized, passed us after ISS had passed. You know, that's the International Space Station, right? Okay. In more detail, the object appeared in view at about 2050, just to the left of the moon in the southwest sky. Object was stationary at first and was same brightness as the ISS, which had passed overhead about 10 to 15 minutes before. It was orange in color and began to move across the sky from the southwest to the northeast, going directly overhead. I observed the movement in a straight line path for approximately 2 to 3 minutes until it flickered and disappeared completely. The space station had passed in a similar path but was visible for a little longer. That was to the point. This next UFO sighting comes to us from Toronto, Ontario, January 20th, 2018. I was on my balcony and saw approximately 11 orbs fly overhead, straight line, equally spaced, and glowing red and bright white light. I was on my balcony, 5th floor, looking out at the window. From the tree line, direction of northwest, I saw a bright red bulb moving towards us, traveling northeast. It was high up in the sky. We live close to the airport, and overhead planes are frequent, however, never this shape, brightness, or color. We continued to watch it come closer overhead when we noticed a second orb sphere traveling behind the first at a reasonable distance, also red. Then came a third, then a fourth. In total, more than 10 passed over us in what seemed like a straight line, equal distance from each other, pulsating red, then bright white, then red. Even though there were a number of them, they did not make any sound. The spheres moved at a steady pace. I was shocked by what I saw, and after the 6th and 7th orb, I ran in to get the phone to capture a video. Who doesn't have their phone on their hip all the time? Anyways, my phone wouldn't cooperate, but I did manage some video. There was a second witness with me on the balcony. They didn't have their phone either.
Hello, I'd like to deposit this to checking.
Fate is a fickle master.
What?
The future is uncertain.
Okay, and what's my account balance?
The horizon is cloudy. I see a long, treacherous voyage filled with great peril.
Look, can I just get a deposit slip or something?
A fortune bank teller. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I see a yellow-eyed serpent
What?
and a low APR.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
There. My goodness. All right, never mind. Moving on. Black triangle sighting in Las Cruces, New Mexico. This occurred January 20th, 2018. Triangular shape outline visible, then red-orange light turned on. Outline no longer visible. Why does this sound like the other one? But it's a different one. Doesn't it sound very similar? It sounds very similar. No longer visible, only red-orange light. Light dimmed, then increased in brightness, then dimmed, and was no longer visible. In more detail, as I drove into my driveway just before 9 p.m. out of the Talavera Desert on the other side of the mountains of White Sands Missile Range, once again another base, a triangular outline caught my eye looking west. I was in the Air Force and am able to identify aircraft. The object was large and stationary, holding the same position throughout the sighting. It appeared to be reflecting the light from New Mexico State University Stadium, which was lit up for an event, as it was low on the horizon. From my viewing position, the mountain blocks the city lights, so I had an unobstructed view with no light pollution. After about 20 seconds, the outline was no longer visible. Slowly dimming, and an orange-red light emerged. Dimly at first, then brightly. The light dimmed again with nothing visible. Then, after another 40 seconds, the light began to brighten in the same position and same color. The light had increased in size and was visible for another 20 to 30 seconds, then dimmed and never reappeared. There were 3 witnesses in my vehicle, all of which saw the light and shape. I looked away to grab my camera, and during that time, one of the witnesses said it rotated. I did not see the object move. I turned my camera to the object, but the battery was dead. I don't believe the battery was affected by anything other than my own fault for not charging it. Darn. All right. Next UFO sighting happened in Thetford? Thetford, maybe. January 21st, 2018. What appeared to be a reddish-orange star pulsating, then dimming for a matter of minutes. In more detail, at 3:25 a.m., my partner woke me up to observe a strange star. It was orangey red, reddish orange if you will. Pulsating, it would shine bright for 45 seconds, then dim out for about 3 minutes, almost long enough to question ever seeing a light to begin with, only to begin glowing back to a brilliant orange. Almost white light, for again roughly 45 seconds, and then dim. It was low enough certainly to not be mistaken for a star. I would pass it off as a satellite if it moved, but it just pulsated for a total of 20 minutes before just fading to black. Just like that. All right. The next UFO sighting, this occurred in Ireland, West Virginia. This is a UFO blast from the past. July 8th, 2007. Hovered over Devil's Darning Needle. That is a funny name. Devil's Darning Needle, which is a small mountain in southern Lewis County. Who said that? You know who said that? Devil's Darning Needle! I swear to God. That is funny. Somebody said it and that just stuck, didn't it? Okay, anyways. Sure, it happened to Beetlejuice as well. I was out hiking about half a mile from my house when I noticed the object hovering over the Devil's Darning Needle, a small mountain in Ireland, West Virginia. It was hovering, then moved left, then right, and hovered over the mountain, then moved straight up and disappeared into the sky. It actually looked like your typical saucer-shaped craft. I had my camera with me because I was photographing the scenery and deer. I managed to get one photo with my 3.2 MP Kodak camera. I was not alarmed or frightened in any way until I downloaded the photo and realized it was a UFO. And then I almost wet my pants. Devil's darning needle. I'm just kidding. But they said wet the pants. Okay. It was kind of scary after the fact. To this day, I have no idea what I saw. I have been a MUFON member for 2 months. I still have the photo and would gladly share with any investigator. To get a good view of the photo, you would have to zoom on in on it. Wow. Sounds pretty fascinating. All right. Moving on to a paranormal point of a paranormal story, because we love those around here. This one is called The Observer. Dun, dun, dun. Reading from the experiencer's perspective. First off, I wanted to say this is not my story. Okay, never mind. I don't know why I said that. This is not their story. I know that can make a story seem doubtful, but I promise you it's true. This was told to me by my 2 cousins in complete honesty and trust. One night, my family gathered for a carne asada. It's like a barbecue. We're eating and sharing stories. Then my cousin, I'll name Danny, asked in all seriousness, "Do you want to hear a scary thing that happened to me and Elsa, her sister?" Or Elisa. Me and a few of us were interested and listened intently. This was of strange occurrence that would happen throughout their lives. The first, she begins, was relatively subtle. She was washing the dishes in the afternoon. A window sits right in front of the sink looking out into the yard when she sees someone walk across the window. It looked like Elisa. She was even wearing her favorite yellow teddy bear shirt. But she was strange and she was stiff. It was as if she didn't know how to act in her body. She continues across the yard and out of the window's view. Danny, thinking she's going to the back door to enter the house, waits to hear her come in, but hears nothing. Instead, she hears the bathroom door open, and to her horror, it's Elisa, who comes out, casually smiling. She tries to explain what she just saw. Elisa outside, but she doesn't believe her and passes it off as her imagination or something. Months later, Danny experienced another bizarre encounter. This time, she was out in the city center in San Luis with her friends after school. They were trying to get a taxi when one of her friends interrupts the chatting and gets her attention. "Hey, isn't that Elisa?" she says, pointing across the street. Danny, confused, looks across the street to see her sister at the bus stop among other people. She is standing there, furiously waving, stiffly, with large eyes and a forced large smile on her face. It was eerie, not normal, as if she wanted her attention urgently. Danny waves awkwardly, unsure of how to respond. When the taxi arrives and they get in, all is as equally confused and freaked out. Oh, they all know Elisa hates the bus and feels it's disgusting and not to her standard. She would never be riding in one, let alone trying to show others she was riding one. They argue about whether that was her, but Danny assures it was. It looked physically like her sister, it just didn't behave like her. The last encounter didn't happen for a few years. Danny was now married, and her husband, Marco, and Elisa were all going to be staying in their childhood home, which is also where the initial window encounter happened. Danny and her husband were sleeping in her and Elisa's old bedroom. It was dark and had 2 beds. After a long nap, she gets up and heads for the bathroom, which is to the right of her room. Before she goes to open the door, she feels the need to look toward the smaller living room, located to the left into their room. Ooh, that's crazy. The front door between. The house was not large, and the living room was visible from doorway. She turns to look, and standing there is Elisa. But it's the other one. Ooh, I got chills. She knew right away. She calls her name anyways. "Elisa?" This thing stares at Danny. It stares hard, as if caught red-handed. Danny was so scared she said she couldn't even move. Then it reacted. It bent itself, like when you are pretending to be a dinosaur. Its legs bent, and it pulled its arms in. Oh, I feel icky. Danny said she felt cold, like all the blood froze. She couldn't breathe. Then it tilted its head and jumped. Yes, she said it jumped like a kangaroo. Only it all looked so unnatural, forced, and bizarre for anyone to do. It quickly reached her and was face to face, inches apart. It began to screech. Danny felt like she was going to pass out. No crap. She yelled out, "Ya Vita, get out!" When suddenly, oh gosh, this gives me chills, she heard the bathroom door open. Elisa came out looking confused. Danny looked awful. Elisa rushed over to see what was wrong. She looked pale and sick. She couldn't speak. She only cried. The thing was gone. Finally, after a few hours, she calmed down enough to explain what happened to Elisa and Marcos, who was also worried and confused. She tried to retell what happened as calmly as she could. Elisa believed in her encounters after hearing about the bus incident from her and Danny's friends. That's when Marcos added in an extra eerie note to the story. He says that while he and Danny were sleeping, he awoke to someone in the room. He figured it was Elisa, back from shopping, so he didn't pay much mind. Then it got closer. It leaned over Marco and strangely looked at Danny, wide-eyed, quizzically. After a few minutes, it retreated and headed for the closet next to the bed. It began furiously going through everything, thrashing clothes and throwing things out, looking at one thing, then another. Then it stiffly got up and walked out of the room. Marcos just assumed Elisa was checking to see if Danny was still sleeping and went to look for something, though he did think her behavior was strange. Ick. They haven't seen this mimic since. They don't know where it came from or why it followed them. As we discussed it, I started maybe thinking it was an alien trying to learn from her and understand her lifestyle. Whatever this bizarre, frightening creature is, I hope none of us encounter it in our lives. Ugh! That is gross! That's like a doppelganger. Ooh! You know, I once saw something pretend to be my friend at my college roommate, and it came into my bedroom, and I heard somebody in my room. I turn around, I roll over, and I'm like, "Samantha? Is that you? What are you doing here?" And this thing smiled so abnormally and so disturbing. It was really, really strange, and I just couldn't believe it. And then when I confronted it, I said, "You're not Samantha." I'm like, "Who are you? What are you? What are you doing here?" And poof, disappeared. Crazy crap. But to keep seeing it over and over again, no. Give me a monster, but don't let it wear the face of someone you know, like a piece of flesh mask or something. Ick. Ugh, I don't even know. All right, well, I have to thank you all for listening to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis, and be sure to check out UFOheadlinenews.com every single day. And also tune into my other weekly shows, Outlander, which is Fridays, and The Kevin Cook Show on Tuesdays. Both are at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time and 9 p.m. Eastern. And catch my paranormal comic, The Outlanders, at theoutlanderscomic.com. Direct links to everything can be found on HeidiHollis.com, or just come on over to InceptionRadioNetwork.com and find absolutely everything there. And if you've experienced something out of the ordinary, want some level-headed advice, or if you've seen a UFO and want to share, just write me at UHN, as in UFO Headline News, at InceptionRadioNetwork.com. Remember always to keep an open mind so you can stay informed and inspired.